Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. My name's Doug Benidt. I'm Associate Curator for Performing Arts here at the Walker. It's nice to see you all. We're very excited about tonight. It's been a great pleasure and a fun ride getting this show together. So what we're going to do is just talk about and celebrate the exhibition Chris Larson Land Speed Record. And we'll talk with Chris and Grant. We'll see some videos. We'll see some images. Towards the end, there'll be some time for a Q&A from all of you, so please think about some questions. And then promptly at 8, we'll all go up and have a drink and continue the conversation. So we're glad you're here. Thanks a lot. And I'd like to introduce the co-curator for the show, Siri Engberg.
Thanks, Doug. Thank you all for coming this evening. It's great to have this good house full of people. And as Doug mentioned, following our talk, the galleries are open, and we would encourage all of you to take the elevator just outside the cinema here to level 7, which is where the exhibition is, and the terraces will be open as well. So please join us up there afterwards. I'm going to introduce Chris Larson first, and then he'll be introducing Grant Hart. For the past 2 decades, St. Paul artist and musician Chris Larson has developed a multimedia practice rooted in sculpture. His work, which has been exhibited and collected internationally, incorporates film, video, photography, and drawing. Often he integrates these elements into sculptural installations that reference architecture, from iconic buildings by architects such as Marcel Breuer, to ordinary rural cabins, to imaginary, sometimes illogical constructions, while building a unique narrative structure. The experience of time and change is crucial to his practice as a sculptor. He's currently a professor of art and the director of undergraduate studies at the University of Minnesota. Larson is also the publisher of In Review, a quarterly print publication presenting a critical response to art in the Twin Cities. And I believe the next issue is out in July, is that right? Since 1996, he has also fronted the House of Mercy Band, a blend of original country gospel and Americana music. And I know we'll be talking about that tonight as well. It's my great pleasure tonight to acknowledge several Walker friends who have helped make this project possible, including Walker trustee Jim Dayton and his wife Megan, Walker trustee Monica Nassif and her husband David, our friends from Franklin Artworks, and the Harpo Foundation. We also want to extend special thanks to a number of individuals who have been crucial to the success of this exhibition, including Chris Larson's studio assistant, Jordan Rosenow, drummer Yusuf Del Valle, sound engineer Tom Garneau, graphic designer Matthew Rizak, Walker design and editorial staff Kathleen McLean, Greg Beckel, and Ashley Duffalo, and Walker installation crew members Peter Murphy and Peter Hanna. We also want to thank the staffs at First Avenue and 7th Street Entry for being so accommodating with the project, as we visited several times, and the staff at the Minnesota Historical Society. And we'll talk about that in a minute, too. And lastly, before he comes up to introduce Grant Hart, I want to extend a very special thanks to Chris Larson and to Grant Hart. This project, as you'll hear in a moment, is one that evolved over several years, with multiple layers being added over time. Chris has had a long connection with the Walker, going back to his first show here in 1998, his performance at Summer Music and Movies in 2005, his wonderful covered bridge sculpture that many of you may remember from 2011 that was in the Cargill Lounge, and many projects in between. Throughout the development of the current exhibition, he has been fully engaged and a true pleasure to work with, and we're thrilled to see this ambitious project really realized in the Walker's galleries. We want to thank Chris for all of this and also extend our gratitude to Grant Hart, whose spirit of collaboration and generosity throughout this project has been nothing short of tremendous. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Chris Larson.
Hi, thanks for coming out. Wow, everybody's here. I do want to thank the Walker Art Center and for the long relationship that I've had with them going back to '98, and such an exceptional place to work with, and it's such an incredible machine that happens behind the walls of the galleries, and so I feel very fortunate to have the opportunity to do this show. So thank you, Siri, and Doug Benidt, and also Peter Murphy and Peter Hanna. There's too many people to thank, but yeah, I feel grateful. Grant Hart Grant Hart and I can't remember when we met, but we've worked together for quite some time now, and I'm grateful for Grant for opening up his. It's a pretty vulnerable thing to have your life on display at a museum. So here we go, Grant Hart. Grant Hart is a musician, songwriter, vocalist, and visual artist. He's the founding member of the highly influential 1980s punk band Hüsker Dü. He is also the founder of the band Nova Mob, 1989, 1984, and also has had a prolific solo career. In 2013, his fourth solo studio album, The Argument, was released on Domino Records. The ambitious 20-song double album was inspired by John Milton's Paradise Lost, and Paradise Lost, a short reinterpreting Milton's classic by his friend William S. Burroughs. Grant Hart, the son of a draftsman, his familiarity with the pen and the brush lettering and a love of unique fonts and recycled images served him well as he made the transition from juvenile to punk dada badass. He has never been listed by name on any of his commercial work, including handbills, collages, and album covers, preferring the credit Fake Name Graphic. He is currently at work on Pop Manifesto, a musical based on the life and work of Theodore Kaczynski. He is also working on a book of auto-destructive collages and continues to produce ritual art from lost material. Please help and welcome Mr. Grant Hart.
Chris Larson here?
Would you like to tell us about the floral arrangement before we begin with the set decor?
Whoa, some of the things that were rescued. I don't know if they were in a box in the film or what, but I had these old firecracker glasses that you used to be able to get at First Avenue. And I thought, red seats, black table, you know?
It works. It's good.
It works.
Yeah. It's very
and
good.
you sought out the calla lilies, and they're really beautiful.
It's a good, yeah, it's a good.
It's
Well-
the best light that I've seen him in, so pardon me while I get distracted here. So you want to talk about stuff?
Let's talk about some stuff. So we thought that we might begin by speaking about a past project that Chris and Grant were both involved in together as collaborators, which is a film called Crush Collision. And one of the things that is interesting about Land Speed Record, the exhibition you'll see upstairs, is that it really does incorporate some through lines that have been present in a lot of Chris's work. The idea of architecture, for example, the idea of an architecture that might somehow be illogical or destroyed, the idea of music that comes through, and specifically a legacy of punk rock and gospel and that kind of merging of those two things. The idea of a narrative structure that doesn't quite make sense, where narratives are layered upon each other and twist around each other and characters come in and out of a story. That's been something that appears in a number of his works and certainly appears in Crush Collision. So maybe before we play just a quick clip from this film, which was made in 2006, you might tell us a bit about how you brought together your cast of characters, including Grant, into the project.
Sure. So Crush Collision started off with a record cover, a Mahalia Jackson record cover, and it had a family sitting around a table. So I wanted to recreate that, and I was working as a gospel singer in St. Paul, and knew this family called the Spiritual Knights, and I asked them if they'd like to be involved with this project, and I told them that I was going to build a house and floating on a lake in northern Wisconsin, and they agreed to it, and also talked
I didn't know you were working as a gospel singer. Tell me about that. How does a gospel singer work?
How does Siri.
Were you in a troupe? I mean, was it an organized, like,
That was my job. It was my day job.
to be in a gospel singing group?
It was.
You, like, punch the clock?
No. No.
Man,
Yep.
that's
Part-time.
part-time. Okay. Was it under the table, or? 'Cause some of these gospel promoters get a little shady.
Yeah, they do. We had a word that we were gonna say.
That's
like,
right.
It's time to move forward.
And I was telling
Grant.
Siri
I think it
earlier
was
that
Chuck Berry or
Hippopotamus.
something like this. Or time to
that
move
Chris
on.
and I never talk about religion, so all the rules are going out the window right off the bat.
You should keep going, Chris.
All right. So.
Did I interrupt? I'm sorry.
No. So we had been friends, and I invited him to play down at the House Mercy, and then we started talking about this film. And I was interested in Grant as a percussionist and as a drummer, and put him behind a piano that you'll see, and play the piano not in a way that you traditionally play it, but as a rhythm instrument, rocking it back and forth. And
Piano had like rocking chair rungs underneath
Sculpture.
so when I first filmed this, this was the whole film. It was this house floating on the water, and got back into it about a year later.
Are you going to show it?
We're going to show a clip of it.
Great.
Yeah.
We have a clip. Yeah, let's play this short clip.
And I'm
Crush
leaving, I know we are, on that old ship of Zion. Ship of Zion, woo-hoo. I'm gonna get on board and go to heaven when I die. And my Father,
I know he will.
whoa, he's gonna be
Yes,
there
my
too.
father's gonna be there too.
Yes, he
Oh,
will.
yeah.
When we join
I know we are.
on that old ship of Zion, ship of Zion, woo-hoo. I'm gonna get on board and go to heaven when I die. Wanna ride, old ship of Zion. Wanna ride, old ship of Zion. Wanna ride, old ship of Zion. Oh, ship of Zion.
Oh, ship of
Oh,
Zion.
ship of Zion.
Wanna ride. Oh, ship of Zion.
Oh, ship of Zion.
Mike Bland.
Yes. And that was Michael.
That was Michael Bland, played with Prince with the New Power Generation. Great drummer.
Yep.
Really beautiful.
Soul Asylum.
Soul Sound.
Soul Sound.
All right. So this project brought together actually a lot of the things that seem to have resurfaced in Land Speed Record in different ways. And so I think we wanted to just kind of walk through a couple more of your projects to kind of show really that I think there is kind of a continuum between some of these projects that really may seem to be potentially unrelated. But let me see if I can, I'm trying to advance my slide. Do I have the right? There we go. So this is a project that you did in 2013 called Celebration Love Lost. And do you want to put a bit of framework around this for people in terms of the history of this particular architecture?
So sure, it's a house built by Marcel Breuer 50 years ago, and it's about 3 miles from my studio. He did it as a gift to one of the monks at St. John's Chapel up in Collegeville when he built that extraordinary building up there, and knew about this house maybe 10 years ago and thought about it, and it wasn't until 2013 that decided to do a project with it with Northern Spark. And Steve Dietz said, Chris, I need an idea if you want to do something. So I floated an idea. I said, okay, I'll rebuild the Marcel Breuer house and burn it down in downtown St. Paul. And he got back to me at like 2 a.m. and he goes, let's do it.
Let's do it.
And so we did it. So we rebuilt this to scale and put it downtown St. Paul. That's when it was built in my studio in St. Paul, and then installed downtown St. Paul at the depot.
At the depot. So I wanted just to dwell on this image for a minute, because this notion of replication, of making a copy of something in the world has been something that you've done in a lot of your work. I mean, including you talked about the house from the last project, Crush Collision. And this notion of making something as exact as possible, but making it in other materials, making it quickly. Can you talk a bit about that idea of replicating?
Sure. I mean, if you go into this Marcel Breuer home in St. Paul and you look out, you're looking at Pig's Eye Lake or the Mississippi River. The views are extraordinary. In Marcel Breuer, there's no windows, as you can see on the sides of the houses. All the viewpoints are these kind of like a camera. The focal point goes out the end of each of the rooms, the library, the bedroom, and the kitchen. And what happened, I think, where my interest in this project began to get deeper was when I started to look out the windows into my studio space. And one of the viewpoints that I was looking at was the pile that we'll talk about later. Mm-hmm. But it's when you relocate something, when you transport something from its original location, something changes. And also as the objects from your home were relocated to my studio, that's where I started to think about what these objects had become and what was their function.
And you can see it's an enormous studio. It's a warehouse, so you've got lots of space to accommodate projects like this. This is done in paper, cardboard, wood, flammable materials, as we'll see. So this is Northern Spark, and how long did it take to burn?
About 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
But it was built to burn.
It was.
It was like an explosives expert, right? Was involved, and yeah, so it was highly.
Was he involved to maximize the combustion, or
She was.
Okay.
Yep.
So.
Why is that funny?
Maximize combustion.
Just comic relief for
Yeah.
your art people.
But this that you just mentioned, the pile. So
Yep.
We wanted to talk about that moment. And so Grant, the house fire of yours was in 2011. Right?
Yeah, this guy that was an attorney of mine, like, called everybody up on the telephone. I mean, and it was like invaded my privacy. I mean, almost the worst thing, because, I mean, at first, because all of a sudden it's like, yeah, tell everybody that, one generation, the fourth generation is the guy that like loses the house for some reason or something like that. And it was like a little too personal. I didn't want, I don't need Ryman Schneider or these people to, talk about it. And but it happened anyway. And the next thing I know, First Avenue was having a benefit event.
the house. I'm just
And
Chris had a couple
yeah,
pictures.
that's the bathroom. Ooh, man. These are the pictures you took?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a really nice surround built around like an octagonal tub. And I had an octagonal sink of the same era that I was given by local photographer Tim Piotrowski.
Yep.
And I loved that sink. But anyway, the cats would go into the surround, and I wasn't sure if they had possibly like got trapped in
You
there.
were worried they might have been lost in the
Because the
fire.
first thing the
Yeah.
first cop said was like, "Oh, they're goners for sure. The animals, you know." But they tell you that so that you don't go running in after them.
Oh, right, of course.
It's
Yeah.
you know psychological training and so.
But the fire didn't completely destroy the house, but there was smoke on everything.
Made
right?
it made it totally unlivable. And
yeah.
it's like,
And then
I don't know. It looks pretty damn destroyed to me.
It was. So you called Chris, and when you knew
Chris
you had
offered. Chris
when
called
you needed to
me.
move these objects
Yeah.
out of the house.
No, you called me. You
Did I call you?
You said Chris.
No, you called me.
Okay.
You're on speed dial.
No, I called you.
I think I got home and it said, Chris, my house burned down. Give me a call. So we talked. and
Oh, by the way,
and I offered to house the belongings.
my
So-
stuff. Yeah,
Yep. So I got my kid, Asher. He's here somewhere.
you were thinking
And
about the film already.
I was. And my son Silas was there, and a bunch of their friends, but had U-Hauls, and Grant went in and clipped the bolt on the door. They had boarded up the house, and we spent the day just hauling things out of the house, and they ended up.
Yeah, we had like
In my
8
studio.
people, and drawers would go right into plastic bags. You'll see a bunch of plastic bags at the beginning of the film. The garage was unscathed, so automotive stuff looks
Looks pretty good.
pretty
right?
good, yeah. And so at the end, you get these, bright colors, and it's almost like the happy ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember visiting the studio early when this had just arrived like a few weeks before, and I said, well, what is all of this? What are you doing something with all of this? And you said, I don't know yet, but obviously it was something you lived with for some time during the Celebration of Loss project. And when in your mind did the idea of making a work of art from this pile emerge?
I was telling, I think it was Jordan or you, I have to be careful what comes into my studio because I'm easily influenced by the things that are in my studio, meaning books and CDs and materials. And so this one, it was hard to ignore this one because you'd walk in and you'd smell of the smoke. Yeah. But it was it was a loaded pile. I mean, the piles of
Loaded pile.
The numerous the discombobulated drum kits with car parts with Bibles and books and typewriters and
You should see what it's like in here.
dangerous. But I started, I'm sure this influenced the Breuer project to burn that building down, having all this material. And I think the question.
I never made that connection.
I did.
The fire?
Okay.
But I started
Talk about a lot of things here, Chris.
Well,
we should do this more often, Grant.
You've used ice
Yeah, we
and
got to
fire,
make films more
right?
often
Yeah.
because we're good at it.
But I started to think about what happens when the walls dissolve away from the things that it contain, and these objects just became. I mean, in the front, you see it's a Studebaker car hood and axle and an airplane propeller, and they sort of were in limbo, and they weren't.
But there's
used.
also red transmission fluid that, like, in
Bleed it
color. Oh no, in black and white, it looks like some
It looks grisly.
film noir
Yeah.
murder scene. It just photographs that way.
Yeah. So we just saw in the film Crush Collision this crazy medieval type machine that was circling you, Grant, and many of the works you've made, even the piece you did here at the Walker in 1998 was kind of an improvised machine. And so in a way, what you needed to build to somehow capture this pile was actually one of the more simple machines I've seen you make. But this was the track. You want to talk a bit about how you
Sure.
set it all up in the studio?
So this went through a lot of iterations of building wires that would carry a camera. I knew I wanted to somehow have the camera pass by the pile. I had taped
Trouble
it
was doing it smooth.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd put it on dollies. I'd put it on mattress carts.
Yeah, you tried a lot of different things.
I did, and then came up with this device where, if you understand, like a clothesline, where as you pull it, the tension is equal the same way.
And it
so
moves.
And
it
Grant, you
moves.
came over many times during this process, kind of checking
I was
in,
watching it
visiting
go
the
on,
pile,
yeah.
seeing how it
But
was.
an important thing with the dynamic of this film, and it's kind of the skeleton in the closet of, there's an underlying thing going on during this whole period where Chris and I were both involved in this project that, it started out, I was very sensitive to the demeanor of one of the participants. And a lot of it was focused, I felt focused at me. And there was also the difference in the kind of musicians we were. We're talking about I'm talking about the musical over at the Soap Factory.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And this guy is partners with Chris Chris is doing the scenes and things like that. And I'm in and out of the place because I'm like shepherding my crap.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
this guy is really working on me, really kind of needling me. And then it would be like this junior high stuff, like where, Chris, guess what Grant did today? And it's like, Grant said this in front of so-and-so, and I don't think that was appropriate, blah, blah, blah. And, it's like, okay, yeah, talk to the guy that wasn't there, right? And so there's this strain, where I'm like, well, I hope Chris understands that, I've got to man up in front of this guy, and I'm not going to take his shit. But I'm also not going to quit the my agreed upon role in Wise Blood. And it ended up with him sending me this email that was like, I think for professional reasons, which I understand you are, you should back out of the project and blah, 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 blah.
Have you ever seen Chuck Berry?
I've seen Chuck Berry.
He's great. I love Chuck.
Are we
He's pretty
serious,
good.
Chuck Berry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we serious, Chuck Berry?
Sure.
Let's
Yes or
keep,
no?
Let's
Yeah.
keep rolling.
Okay.
Let's roll.
Yes.
But,
let's
but,
roll.
but I think.
Well, now I
you
look
ca-
like
but
an
you-
idiot
no,
that
but you
doesn't
came
finish
back
their
to
stories.
You
No,
came
no.
back.
I haven't finished one.
Nick's,
What I was asking though was really, what did it help
So
you
I-
to keep
so
visiting
anyway, I
the pile?
said,
Did it
"Fire
help
me."
to
And-
come to the pile frequently to visit these objects? Was it comforting to you in any way to be near it, to come arrange them, to be in and out of the studio with some of this work?
I'm sorry, I was
Well, I mean,
thinking about
you
Chuck
came, you
Berry.
came in and out of the studio a lot, right? And you were kind of there's a bit of a composition
Well, how
to
often
what's
would I be
going on.
there? I could
Did you
stop
come
in
over
like
a
a
lot?
couple times a week.
Sure.
You're teaching, you got,
Yeah.
everything going on with that, and
And
you're
what I'm getting
building
at
the
is that
set. And
there was some arranging of objects that was done during the course of
Let's
some
say
of your
we
visits.
fluffed it.
You fluffed it.
yeah, I mean, we didn't
So-
want, BMI magazine,
Right.
in 7 different places.
There's
like-
Duchamp. There's the Globe.
Yeah, it
there
was
are a lot
heavy
of,
with Duchamp
I mean, so as
imagery.
you're watching the film, you do see some of these kind of relationships visually between some of the objects, and this is the aerial view that you finally hit on, and when you were able to get the overall the overhead camera. Sorry, I have a bit of a. There we go. And this is the 85-foot accumulation, which I know you've made as a photograph as well. But so this is what we see in the first part of the installation upstairs. It's projected at almost life size on the gallery wall. And on the opposite wall is a second film that was made in 16 millimeter. And this is where you really did the handheld camera through the pile. Do you want to talk about how this one emerged and why 16 millimeter versus the other film?
The overview, you're separated from maybe the intimacy or your relationship between the ceiling and the pile is very different than the close-up vignettes. I was interested in looking in closer to the pile with older technology. The overhead shot is shot on 4K, very high resolution video, and this one I was interested in having the projector of the 16 millimeter, the whirring sound, almost the soundtrack of something going forward as you're maybe thinking about something going backwards. And it was just nice to get in closer and get you more of an intimate look into the pile.
That is not as it were in the film. That shot of the drums there, that was after the pile had been condensed.
It was condensed.
Aren't they?
Right?
Nope.
No, that is.
It's just black and white. It's
close
just,
up, okay.
just the Bible.
I'm
So-
sorry. I really got to reiterate this, and it's not going where I think you think it's going. Anyway, what I'm saying, this whole Chuck Berry thing, which is our safe word. All right? No, when you're in an interview with somebody and it's like somebody's about to stink up the room, you want to tell them, hey, go away. But the fact that Chris is trying to make this film while this, like, every indication that I'm the most obnoxious asshole on the planet and, like, you know, not being smooth as far as this other track is concerned, that was a test of artistry, but ultimately friendship, which is like, you know, there's no friend like a forgiven friend.
Yeah.
And, you know, I forgive you. No.
Which brings us to Land Speed Record. So, at a certain point during the making of the film, you decided there was a relationship to, or you wanted there to be a relationship to part of Grant's past, part of his recording, you know, the history
Wasn't
of
it
the
the
recording.
running time?
The running time. Land Speed Record was it the only live album, or was it it's the first live album, but was it the
there's
only one?
illegitimate live albums galore.
So, but this is 1981.
Yeah, it was the first 12-inch record that we put out, and it was a condensation of all these really fast songs that we had. And we played a second set later in the evening that we're trying to have released. Wow, who took that?
The internet is wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, I have that 1,000-year stare, don't I?
So maybe, Grant, could
And
you
I am funky.
take us back to 1981, if you would? So you guys have just returned from the Children's Crusade tour.
Right.
You've got that date set for recording.
Which wasn't based on the Slaughterhouse Five, actually. It was the European Children's Crusade.
Okay.
I mean, Slaughterhouse Five takes place in Europe as well, but it was one of the last crusades in the Middle Ages. And
that's
we
what's
thought,
supposed-
okay,
talk
we're
about that
kids,
later.
we're like, you know, I think only 2 of us were of legal age in the U.S.
Oh.
But
So you got back to town. You guys are super tight. You had all these dates on the road. You had the recording
Yeah.
set. Can you just?
But also we were like undergoing, privations. I mean, we were staying with some people that we got rent receipts from so that we could get food stamps while we were in that town.
Yeah. So that's true DIY then back then, I guess.
Well, fraud.
Fraud. Okay. Fraud. So what was the mood with you and the band at that point?
The mood?
Yeah, just how did you guys feel? Because that was a pretty, pivotal moment for the band.
Yeah, it felt like we were, you're budgeting $7 a day a piece, you know, and you know, usually 2 of that for beer back then, 3 of that for smokes, and then you eat oatmeal.
But when the record hit, though, it sounded like nothing
Why is
else.
that funny? You do it. Laughing at misery.
So the record hit. It sounded like nothing else, right? Nationally, even, and
Nothing that called it what we called it.
which was
I mean, there's like free jazz and stuff that like when you listen to the surges and when you listen to the whole thing in a, you know, the gestalt of the thing, there's like Bengali music and, you know, Indian music that, you know, because we were able to get this like raga thing
right
happening,
Yeah.
and that's part of what people say was our unique hardcore sound.
And it, for
And then
me,
we, you know, we got sick of playing with all these bands that, you know, when you're surrounded by punk rockers all the time,
like DOA.
well, I mean, friends of mine, but,
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of like, well, I was supposed to be different, so you change into something else. And the sign of a good band is the brotherhood and the togetherness that allows you to be patient and maybe copy what somebody in your band is doing.
Right. Yeah.
And that's how a sound develops between like 3 or 4 different people.
And you, when we were recording in the entry in April, you used the word adrenaline a couple times, and you and I have been talking about cars and engines the last
Right.
couple days. What
Superchargers.
What drove your need for speed at that point in your career?
One of us took a lot more amphetamines than the other 2.
Okay.
Yeah, but it wasn't me.
Wasn't it?
The youth, the
Artistically.
passion. I mean,
Yeah.
when you get behind that much dispersal of energy outwardly, and you're pushing it at a room full of people that are pushing it back, and I'm sorry, but I'm not talking about something that happens now. There's a glory that is felt, you know, that you are like surging through, and that, you know, the light is going from blue to white.
We have a clip. Let's see some of that white light.
White heat.
It's YouTube.
This is 7th Street entry, September of '81.
See what I mean?
Right.
One into the next. Woo.
That was great.
Thank you.
So Land Speed Record was one song into another, just like we just saw.
Pretty much.
26 minutes,
Click, click,
35
click, boom,
seconds,
boom.
nonstop. And that was one of the things, Chris, you were interested in about this album.
Mm-hmm. I heard that album. It was probably 82. My brother brought it home, Kenny, and it was the most abstract thing I'd probably ever heard. I mean, this is around the time of like, who was on the radio? We said it was Dinah Ross, and it was Endless Love.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
and it was right.
and it sounded so radical, and and there was a song on there called Gilligan's Island. I thought it was very funny, and you couldn't find it because there's no tracks. It was one song after another, and I remember trying to find that Gilligan's Island, and I couldn't understand it anyway, what they were saying. But it was like, this will never be on the radio, and I thought it was so radical. And
Well, it ended up being on college radio because they could put on one side of it and go to the laboratory and come back, or go down to the Commons, get their lunch, and like, all right, I still got 13 minutes.
But I was a Hüsker Dü fan, and
Easy room, man.
really,
Yeah. They'll laugh at anything.
yep. Probably didn't get you till Zen Arcade, or definitely
Okay.
New Day Rising, which is a great record. But it just had this is your formative years, 15, 16, 17.
They were all
year,
formative years.
You know?
I know, it's just what you're turning into at the time.
But I found this, I think I probably just started listening, as I was looking at the pile, listening back to these records.
Look at all the tape, or is that snow?
Snow.
Okay, it looked like duct tape all over
Yeah,
the building.
that's snow all over the place.
I've seen a lot of duct tape, Chris.
Yep. But I just, looking at the drum kit that were there that once moved, it's just ferocious. And now laying there. And then I think there was a Land Speed record in the pile, or there was.
Probably was. Yeah.
And so looked at that time, and the time that it was going over the pile was close to that time. And it felt like a really great way to make this as the soundtrack to to this piece.
And you should talk about too, Chris. You're a musician as well. You're an accomplished musician. You play
Professional.
music. Professional.
I can go back to
Yeah, there's
there.
a great
there
shot.
we go.
And Chris, he looks like he's
Is that-
16.
are you in there?
He's on the right there. You're 14 or 15. No.
16.
Wow.
How about that?
So can you talk about
Looks like a mortician.
My other part-time job, Grant.
you've
Was
got
that
these.
professional though?
Yeah, no. Did it for free.
So you've got kind of parallel artistic pursuits in your life. Can you talk about how they influence one another, and especially this exhibition?
Sure. So I played in that band I played growing up with my brother. I played 7th Street, not like Mr. Hart over here. But it was a blend of punk and pop and a love of...
See, I was thinking a gospel group like Robes.
Oh, no.
Ale.
That's later.
Yeah, that's later.
No, this is the House of Mercy band.
Yeah, okay.
This one. That was my job for 10 years. Then I got a job at the University
That's right.
of
You were the
Minnesota.
musical director for that.
I was.
Wow.
But I know it's one of these things where music, architecture, rhythm, melody, harmony are constantly coming in and out of my work, both musically and sculpturally. And with this one, it was looking at Land Speed record. It's the sound. What we did is where I'm going to go with this. Is what I wanted to do was I hired, and he's here, Yusuf Diwali. He was a former grad student of mine.
Where are you, Yusuf?
There he is.
Take
There
a bow.
he is. Yeah.
And got Yusuf to. He's in a speed. Would you say speed metal, death metal? What do you call it?
Death Thrash.
That's death thrash. Okay. And I asked him. I played him the Land Speed record. I said, "Can you memorize this?" He said, "Sure." And so he listened to it 300 times. That Land Speed record.
Yeah, he
which
worked
is-
really hard.
which is amazing. And we went into 7th Street, set up, Tom Garneau is here too. He set up, there he is right there. Thanks, Tom. Set up microphones, and we re-recorded 35 years later in 7th Street Entry on a Lucite drum kit that we purchased. And
Yeah, why don't we show the clip and then we'll show some of the
Okay.
the pieces of this and the space in which it was recorded.
Gilligan's Island.
So as a sculptor, we add things or we subtract things. And with this piece, and like a lot of my other works, either I'm burning things down or building things up. In this one, I took that land speed record and sculpted out the drums, or the guitar, the vocals, and the bass, and was left with the core or the heart of this record. So basically, it's a 35-minute punk rock drum solo.
And somewhere along the line, 7th Street Entry itself, the architectural space, the room, the details, became important to this piece. That was a layer that came after some of these others that we've talked about, the two films.
You're not going to burn that down, are you?
Maybe.
I'll help.
So a bit about that space. Maybe we should just talk about, you spent a lot of time there. It looks like in some of these old calendars, 2-3 times a month.
You know what? Back in those days, downtown was so happening that you do your sound check, you would like trot around town for 3 hours, eventually go to Northern Lights.
Yeah.
There was, what was it, Abdul's Cafe? Or no, there was a downtown Java.
Right.
There were
2
two
doors
different
down.
shinders.
Yep.
A McDonald's in between, Hot Licks,
Oh, yeah.
Hot Licks Records. I mean, and Pimps. But it was a real, different kind of activity downtown.
Yeah.
Not violent at all. I mean, but wonderful interaction. It was like a Superfly movie or something. Everybody just grooving along.
And you talk a bit about what that venue has meant. You were there very early on in your careers and played there often. You came back from Children's
I was the first person to ask
Crusade.
to play in the room that became the Entry.
Yeah. So this was First Avenue didn't exist as First Avenue until later that year,
Until 1980, right?
1981.
They
Yeah,
took
it's like
the name in
New
80?
Year's Eve, I think. Yeah. So you guys were playing next to Sam's, right?
Yep.
Which was the danceteria.
It became a danceteria. Now, they had great DJs there at the time doing the danceteria stuff. Roy Freedom and Kevin Cole and.
So here we are coming. This was as we came back in April. This was what we just saw with Yusuf. But you went out and you bought some drums. And these were the reason for them being clear. Well, this is
Well,
a
it's kinda
1980s
weird.
set,
Did you-
right?
Did you think about finding clear drums? I know you went out and bought an old wrecked one to test. But I saw these drums in Twin Town Guitars, and there were not that many. They're new. They're not like the '70s Vistalite drums. And we were down there doing something, and was thinking, man, look at those, and you know, I think we knew about them before we knew we wanted them. You know what I mean?
Yep. I mean, things come and go with, the show was going to be, for 2 years, it was going to be a video and a 16mm film.
Yep.
And things came and went. I was going to melt the drum kit down in a kiln.
That's right.
I think that's why we were thinking
I
about
reiterated.
he didn't want to
I was like,
do it.
you're going to have a bunch of bubbles.
Yeah.
And someone along the way decided it was going to turn brown, so you decided
Yeah.
not to do that, right? That was.
And there were things that came and went, but then going into recording in 7th Street Entry, saw that iconic bar rail that separates the, one.
There
Here
it
we
is.
go.
Yeah.
So for the show, decided to relocate that bar rail and recreate that exactly and reposition it, or position it exactly it is as you are at 7th Street. So you feel it, but it's like there's something.
And we talked about trying to incorporate the aroma of 7th Street Entry too.
The patina of 7th Street Entry.
Well, you clean the rugs now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. I mean, back when there was smoking,
Yeah.
right.
cigarettes, and spilled beer.
Yeah, and the capacity of this room is 250. It's, I think, 15 feet from the stage to the. It's a small space, So when you're in it, you really feel that. And like you were saying, Grant, that energy was really palpable. I'm sure.
Yeah.
When you were
Now
on
there
stage
was none of
and-
the upper level stuff
Yeah.
at the time of the recording, so it was a little airier, but not by much. There was no barriers like that. The place where the bar is where the stage was originally. So that had a lot to do with the way that sounded.
So this recording, you want to talk about the catalog and how this has come into the album?
Sure.
Okay.
So this, we recreated Land Speed Record, but only drums, and it is the first Walker Art Center album
I think.
released.
Officially, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's WAC 001.
Yeah.
And it's we pressed it crystal clear, so it's a
Walker organization.
Walker Art Center.
Okay.
WAC, whack.
Oh, whack. I
Yeah.
thought it was wax, like.
work
Never
with. This is Matt Rizak right up front here, and he ripped off again. We're recreating and ripping off the original Land Speed Record, taking out everything.
Hey, man.
Everything.
I
but,
stole that picture from an encyclopedia.
Okay.
I appropriated.
So I'm taking it.
That's not an issue for me.
So, can we just talk a bit about your graphics, about the logo you designed for the band, about the
Yeah, I was,
you did all the broadsides?
I had been in and out of the print shop, and the layout that I did, the words Hüsker Dü were ripped, but they were orange, and the plate. This was when they had Insti prints, and it was like paper plate offset printing, like terrible. But it was cheap, and they couldn't get the image because it was orange. It needed to be dark black. So I went into the car and colored it in with a Sharpie in like 10 minutes. And it stuck as the logo when it was kind of like, I need to make a poster quick, We had used it written other ways briefly before then. This was we had the logo the first summer of the band. But you won't be seeing that logo on any of the Walker stuff.
No.
No way.
but Grant has
I
made-
ain't going there.
You've made
Wouldn't
very
touch that
generously
one with a
made some
10-foot
broadsides,
pole.
which are up in the galleries. You may take them as you walk into the exhibition. But Grant has been making collages on the photocopier in honor of the exhibition.
Oh yeah, the handouts for the
Yes.
exhibition are.
So this album will be available right around the time, just after the time of your show.
Yeah.
Right, August 1st. So the big news is that Grant has agreed to play with a band to kick off Music and Movies in Loring Park on
I fired him.
Monday already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
So it's Monday, August 1st. We hope you can join us. There's rumors between these guys. We're hearing something. They're going to build a set. Maybe it's an airplane. We don't know yet. So
Thank you.
I haven't told the tech people about
Here,
this at all yet.
I'll
so-
shake the cats out of the bag.
Sorry.
So did you hear he's working on a secret project?
Forgive me.
Chuck Berry, man.
Chuck Berry. But we'd love to hear some of your questions. Spend a couple of minutes, and then we'd leave some time for you to all see the exhibition in the galleries. So maybe we can put the house lights up just a little and hear some other questions from all of you. They have a roving mic. Here it comes.
I can shout.
Yeah.
I would love to hear about the photographs that you have with the drum.
Oh,
that's
we have a
something we haven't
picture
talked about.
actually.
So we there's a
That you helped work on, you mean?
as you enter into the space, there's 3 photograms, is what we're calling them now.
We're calling them photograms.
And this is a part that Grant and I collaborated on. And we took here we go. This is in the studio, and
Oh,
we're...
you know what? We have 2 different things on the screen.
Oh, wow. They can't see that.
No.
Can you give them what's
Can we
on
show
our
what the
monitor?
last slide here before we run the film? Sorry. Just so people get a sense of.
So we took
connection.
we took the kit that Yusuf played at 7th Street and brought them into the studio and
Thanks.
stacked them up like a sculpture, and then flashed a light through it onto light sensitive photo paper, creating a kind of a ghostly memory of the thing before it. So it's not a photograph. Photograph is what we looked is with a
Photograph is
mechanical-
made with a negative. There was no negative involved
Right.
in
This is a
making the
cameraless
process.
photograph.
Just light through the drums onto the paper.
But it's nice. You can see there's the residue of Yusuf's drumming comes through on the what's so funny?
Sounds like a song title, The Residue of Yusuf's Drumming.
Next album.
Yeah.
It's got some wear after one day. That's true. So those are upstairs as you walk in.
We had to keep dusting them all the time because it would show up. And
Another question out here? Right here.
Yeah, that's amazing. When I walked in, I thought they were abstract paintings and it was only in closer examination that I realized that they were photograms.
Did you think they were drums?
No,
Oh,
but I thought
wow.
they were evoking drums. I thought they were just abstracts, and I thought, Chris, you should paint more. But I'll confess also that I was one of those DJs that actually put on that record to leave the room so I could go to the washroom. So that's why I was laughing so hard over that.
Okay.
But what I wanted to have you, Grant, amplify was this idea, this beautiful poetic phrase that you had about the feedback in a room and the glory and the light turning from blue to white. Could you just talk more about what that experience was like for you?
If you don't know, I won't be able to explain it to you. No, I mean, just like, I can't explain it twice. You know, it's like I could throw around different metaphors, but, you know, you either been there and know what it's like or you haven't. But, you know, it's definitely a good feeling. Maybe it's, you know, the evolution of, you know, man and his, you know, since we're on the topic of land speed record, the evolution of speed, you know, when you go from the penny farthing to from the horse to the penny farthing bicycle to the locomotive to, you know, the safety bicycle to the motorcycle to the automobile to the jet, man is constantly moving faster, and a lot of what he is chasing is that adrenaline rush, you know, and it's kind of a dope thing too, where it's like once you've gone 180 miles per hour, you're going to see what 182 is like, or 183, but I mean just constantly reaching that new flame, that, you know,
What else?
A lot of men died because of that adrenaline. You know, the man's chasing velocity has caused many lives.
This actually, I have a question for Yusuf. So sorry you're not on stage. Can I ask you a question? But what was it like for you re-recording this drum solo separate from the songs, and like as a musician who, I don't know, does other types of music? Did it take you how many takes did it take you? And yeah, what was that experience like?
You did it in one take.
2 takes?
2.
Yeah.
Two.
Can you hear me?
Still one.
We did it in 2 takes. It was learning it was a little painful for me. The first time,
Physically?
yeah, physically. It's first time I heard it was there was something I'd never listened to before, and the type I listened to black metal, death metal, any type of metal you want, all day. But this was pushing my limit in terms of what my ears could understand. Like it just didn't make any sense to me. As Chris said, I listened to it 300 times. I think it was closer to 200 to try to learn it. Usually it doesn't take me that long to learn something, but it was just pushing myself to keep listening to it. At the end of it, I ended up really appreciating it, which is something that happens, I think, when you listen to something 200 times.
Yeah.
But I started understanding how. I didn't start to understand. I think I had a sense of what kind of drummer Grant is, and I really respect him for what he did in that album.
Well, what I thought was really cool about working with you, and I didn't rehearse you because part of my philosophy with this whole thing is, you know, I might move some objects in the pile to be deliberate about making the film, but I was going to like treat it like a campsite, like not have any effect of this appropriation. You know, is that a fair word? The appropriation of the image and the sound into your work? Mm-hmm. Is that the word they use? It sounds a little bit legal icky, but
You hear it in museums all the time.
but then you reached the place where you had to go with it, oftentimes doing things in a different way than I had, which I was like, wow, that's a cool way to approach that. That's, you know, and is it more simple? Is it more efficient and effective? Because drumming is all about the efficiency, like the fewer superfluous movements as possible. You know, wrist action instead of arm action. Cymbals down tight and close rather than, you know, so you can like go that fast for as long as you need to. Yeah, you were a pumping engine behind those drums, brother, and I hope you continue to make music as well as the other things you enjoy.
More questions? Anyone else before we?
I had a question.
Okay.
Or I'm
There's
not
one way
sure
up
who
there,
this
too.
is really for. I'm back here in the back.
Hi.
To me, it's very interesting in the whole work, which I haven't even looked at yet, but I was actually at Chris's studio and saw this thing kind of coming together, and hearing you speak about it now, the contrast between the kind of intense immediacy of punk rock, which, having lived through it and kind of seen it as it was happening, to have it examined in the way that you're doing now is incredibly surprising and not the sort of thing that I ever would have imagined happening with this music, because it was had a kind of evanescence kind of intensity that didn't feel like it was a thing that you could even reflect upon at all. You know what I mean? And to have it kind of pulled out and treated almost nostalgically in a way is puts me into a real state of like, oh, I'm so old or something. I don't even know what. It's something that I guess I wonder what was on your mind in terms of like your relationship to the kind of punk rock intensity of Land Speed Record and the loss of all these things in this pile, and the drums that are just smoke damaged and in heaps. What was on your mind as you were kind of putting those things together?
When I saw Hüsker Dü, it was a thrill. When I heard it, it was a thrill. But I think now when you go to shows and you see people experiencing the show through their telephones, you can't replicate. You can't get that feeling through this experience. And I think that one, it was sculpting out all the players but the drums. It was just it was a way to make it maybe as abstract as it did when I first heard it when I was a 15-year-old boy. And it still feels, listening to it now, it feels really abstract as hearing this thing go for 26 minutes. It's like a horse galloping that is, after a while, it gets more meditative. I never thought of Land Speed Record as meditative. But now, with it stripped down, you hear that drum, and it just, you can watch the film and think, it's just the images are melting down the screen, and you get in this mood. So maybe it's, being 50, you start to feel the world in a different way than you did when you were 15.
Well, the word has been tossed around, loss.
Mm-hmm.
But, if losing 100, the stuff hasn't been, it's still somewhere in a corner of your studio rather than big, but it's still stacked up in there. But there's a liberation that comes with like, okay, that's gone. I should go to don't have that anymore. And then all of a sudden you get into this, like, you're streamlined, you live in an apartment, things are groovy, can come and go as you please. And, also during this interval, my mother, who I was a caregiver of, she passed away, so there's that, like, change in life that was happening too. But one of the things that was unfindable in the mess was a badge collection that I had. And after about a year or so of being like, don't need nothing, I started buying badges. And it's like, whoa, okay, we're not going to build another boat anchor. We're not going to, build at least not until I get rid of it. If anybody sees anything they want, just let me know.
Maybe one last question up here.
Yeah, hi. I love what you were talking about the abstraction of the drumming, how the music is abstract. It really is. My experience of the show was very much that, and I was interested in hearing the history of that, and after having experienced it, I also found
What's abstract mean?
Abstract, it doesn't represent something other than the experience you're having in the moment. It's not standing for something else that's outside of that experience. It just is what it is. It's like sound or breathing or other. Anyway, let me finish what I was. going to say, though, I thought the way the floor shines was extremely, it enhanced that experience beautifully. It felt like it was sinking into water. I even had, I really looked carefully to see, is it water? Is
You mean the tile?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way it's
I was really
shined
touched by that, too.
is so glossy. And I was wondering, Chris, is that something that you feel is a necessary aspect of this experience now? Because looking at it behind you on the screen, it's not reflecting. It's not sinking into anything.
That was one of those things that you discover once you move into the space. And
That's how it exists in that room. This is how it exists in this room. I mean, that is the room where we want people to continue seeing it in.
You had
But
talked, though, about
this
maybe
is for the
building a
benefit of
floor.
the talk, and
That was the
for that
plan.
benefit only, really.
there was talk about building a floor in there, but once you get in there and you see that, what happens with the reflection, with the image going into the architecture, I mean, it just became apparent that was
The way.
needed, right?
And there was something nice about the proportion of that gallery, the proportion of 7th Street entry. There were some things that just kind of clicked. And part of working in that space was what I think made you start thinking about building the rail, right? I mean, having that.
I mean, these guys have been great because it's like, Siri and Doug, I'm going to add a sculpture in, and we're going to add a couple of photographs. This was like a month before this opened up. So.
And you built it in like 3 days.
Yeah.
No, that was one of the most interesting things about this project for me, was that it just it became accumulative, but tighter and tighter and tighter, like a good song. It was just conceptually just got really good in the last 2 months. So.
And a lot of pieces of this project just fit together so nicely. We'd comment frequently. It's like, oh, it's meant to be. This feels right. It's just, there's something just meant to happen about this show.
Yeah.
I think we're out of time.
I think we are. We'd love for you all to see the show if you haven't already. Again, it's upstairs at the Medtronic Gallery, the 7th floor, and the terraces are open too. So thank you
Free beer
both
and
for
chicken.
being here. Thank you. Thank you, Grant. Thank you.